cannot be only medical, it cannot be only biology. We need a very multidisciplinary team with software, lab, biologists, clinical researchers, and clinical people all under one roof. So it is rare to see that combination, and that is what we've built. From an academic background, we have 54 PhDs and about 260 plus masters in the company, many from prominent institutes like IITs, IIC, etc. We call omics. Omics means measuring the various different molecules inside the human body. You can see various things listed here. Genomics is your DNA that all of us carry. Microbiome is all the bacteria that is inside the body. Epigenomics is how the DNA is modified and to make it function in appropriate ways in different parts of the body. And similarly, so all of these are various different types of molecules inside the body that you cannot measure with a microscope, you cannot see with a microscope. They are much smaller than that. So it needs specialized technology to understand and measure, and these may be very different in every individual. Your DNA may be different from mine. So what we do is to measure all these things and build applications to enable two things. One is drug discovery and one is precision medicine. The problem we try to solve is that drug discovery is a very tough task. The amount of money that goes in to explore various drug candidates for a particular disease is quite large. So, for example, you have to first test in test tubes. Only 15% of that will be considered useful to go into animal studies. Only 10% of what succeeds in animals will actually go into human trials. Only 50% of that will succeed in the first phase of human trials. Only 30% of that further will succeed in the second phase. So a lot of attrition happens. You would have to try a lot to eventually find one candidate. And the main problem in drug discovery is to increase these success rates. And that is where our focus, using measurements of all of the omics that I showed you on the last slide, along with AI. So given omics generates a lot of data, and AI is now evolving to be able to get more insights from that data. So we build AI-driven tools, and our services enable insights into various parts of this pipeline and how these rates can be improved. Precision medicine, which is if you're a patient or a doctor and you're trying to treat or diagnose, then how can you do it better in a more personalized, precise way? The biggest application is in cancer, oncology, where cancer is caused by a genetic change causing the cells to divide faster, and one cell then becomes many, many disorganized cells, and that is what is cancer. So across the life cycle of cancer, the work that we do, the tests that we create, are used across the entire life cycle. For example, some people are at risk for cancer than others because they were born that way. So that is risk assessment. So using a genetic test, one can today identify who is at higher risk and therefore needs to take action, and who is not at a high risk. Then, cancer develops, as we all know, for the initial parts it is silent, there is no symptoms, you don't feel anything. And then by the time you feel symptoms, it's often too late, the cancer has spread. So early detection, how do we detect cancer when it is not visible, it is not announcing itself, there is no symptoms? That is another big application of the efforts that we are putting in. And so the tests that we create allow us to detect cancer early. Then, of course, as the cancer progresses, it has to be treated, and not all cancers are treated with the same drugs. cancers are treated depending upon, you have to look at their DNA inside the cancer, and based on what you see there, the treatment can change. So treatment selection based on genomically testing the tumor is another area that we work on. And then is monitoring. You treat, for example, you do surgery, you remove the tumor, you think you've removed everything, but small traces may remain. And those are so small you cannot see them, you will not even see it on a PET scan or a CT scan. But using our DNA tests, you can actually see these things. And so using monitoring to see whether the disease is still there, whether the cancer is still there, or has it gone away, that is the other aspect of the cancer life cycle. So our tests enable decision making across this entire spectrum from the beginning to the end. So for example, I will just give you one statistic. If every adult woman in India were to be screened for risk and action taken, then studies show that 750,000 cases of cancer can be averted and 250,000 deaths can be prevented. So that is the power of this technology.
ಆಮೇಲೆ early detection ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ treatment becomes so much more effective and also more affordable. So ನಮ್ಮ population scale ನಲ್ಲಿ intervention ಬೇಕಂದ್ರೆ the earlier we can detect, the more effective our healthcare systems will be.
Our tests are applicable to is what we call reproductive health. So when you have a baby, when a woman is pregnant and you want to check whether the fetus's health is okay, you can now do these tests without touching the fetus, because when you touch the fetus there is a small chance of losing it. So from the mother's blood you can do what is called non-invasive prenatal screening. You can check for some disorders by just taking the mother's blood, and from that you can get an idea of whether, for example, whether the fetus could have Down syndrome or not. If the screening does indicate something is wrong, then only you do what is called diagnostic testing. You put a needle in and get some sample from either the placenta or some part of the amniotic fluid, and you test for that. So that there are a number of different tests for this that we do. And then of course you would have heard increasingly people are opting for in vitro fertilization, test tube fertilization, because of various infertility problems that are increasing in the society. People are having children later or trying to have children later, there's stress and all kinds of things. So when you do in vitro fertilization, you take the sperm and egg and an embryo is created and that embryo is implanted into the woman. But before implanting, of the many embryos that are there, you have a choice of which embryo to pick. And by looking at the DNA before you implant, you can make sure that the DNA is good, there are no major diseases before you implant. So that is called embryo testing. So this is another area that our tests support. So screening in particular, for Down syndrome is becoming standard. For almost every pregnancy in the West is now being screened through these genetic tests. And also research is expanding these tests to not only look for Down syndrome but look for a number of other genetic diseases. So in the future we can imagine that every pregnancy will be tested non-invasively for Down syndrome and a number of other diseases, which will overall reduce the burden of genetic disease in India. Right? So that is the impact of what we are working on.
ಈಗ ಗವರ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಪ್ರೋಗ್ರಾಮು ಇದೆ ಫಾರ್ ಸಿಕಲ್ ಸೆಲ್, ಸೊ ದಿ ಮಿನಿಸ್ಟ್ರಿ ಆಫ್ ಟ್ರೈಬಲ್ ಅಫೇರ್ಸ್. Now that can also be tested, but there you have to go into taking the amniotic fluid or the sample from the placenta, and you can see the sickle cell markers. This many.
Yes, this is an emerging frontier as people are getting more and more uh, aware of their health and their choices. For example, nutrition. Not everybody can handle all kinds of food in the same way, and so there is a field called precision nutrition where based on your DNA you can modulate a few things that you can eat. There are microbiome informed prebiotics and postbiotics. So many people have gut problems, diarrhea, constipation, inflammatory disease, and their probiotics can help, but not all probiotics are equally meant for everybody. So microbiome informed probiotics. So based on your bacteria that is sitting inside you, based on that you can figure out what that is based on a genetic test, and then have a more precision choice of what probiotics to take. Similarly for skin health, eczema, acne, all of those areas are also, it is possible to do a microbiome, bacteria informed precision probiotic choice. Some people are quite interested in living longer and living healthier, and so monitoring their aging, monitoring their organ health. All of that is now today possible with all the omics technologies that we have. Clinicians and hospitals in India and many neighboring countries in Asia, Southeast Asia, Middle East. We get samples from a network of 2,500 clinicians and hospitals all across the country, and so we have sales and sample collection network across India, and these are some examples of hospitals who refer tests to us. All of the major prominent hospitals will be there in the list. In addition, our customers are also there in the US. All the major genomics companies in the US, they are either creating instruments, devices, or they are diagnostic companies that are running genomic tests in the US, or they are pharma companies doing drug discovery. We have long-standing relationships with many of them, and we've completed more than 500 projects for these companies where they rely on our what is called bioinformatics, our ability to understand and derive insights from genomic data to drive their decision making. So these are all some of the major names in the US. These include genomics companies, diagnostic companies, foundations, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation we work with, universities, Johns Hopkins, University of Chicago, those are our collaborators for the early cancer detection work that we do. Pharma companies, Sanofi, AbbVie, Takeda. So these are all long-standing customers of STRAND. The lab tour will be there a little later. This is a genomics center, what we call our 32,000 square feet genomics center. This is where all the samples from all across the country come, and then through quite a advanced high-tech process, all of these molecules are extracted and their DNA is sequenced, and that results in a lot of data. So for example, we generate many terabases of genomic data every month, and then all of that data is then analyzed to understand health implications and come up with clinical reports. We were the first College of American Pathologists accredited laboratory for genomics in India. So the College of American Pathologists reviews, inspects, and accredits laboratories based on following proper processes and high enough quality guidelines. And from 2017 onwards, when we became the first lab in India for genomics to be accredited, we've had inspections periodically every year, every other year, and we've always passed those inspections with flying colors.
Actually, first in South Asia.
First in South Asia.
To be accredited.
We have many other firsts. Of course, some of them we've talked about. We were the first academic spin-off in India We were the first bioinformatics genomics company in India and probably among the first in the world. We were the first Indian-made software to receive 20,000 citations in the peer-reviewed literature. So scientists across the world have used our software to come up with new discoveries and published, and there are 20,000 papers that refer to our software. We were the first to pioneer genomic testing in India. We were the first CAP, College of American Pathologists, accredited laboratory for genome sequencing in India. I talked about, if every woman were to be tested in India, 750,000 cancer cases can be averted. We were the first to publish a large-scale study of that in India. We were the first to publish a large-scale study of diagnosing neurological disorders in using genomic testing. And we were the first in India to introduce early detection for cancer test without using any radiation, without using any invasive procedure, based on what is called epigenetics.
Can I add one more first? Actually, STRAND is the first AI company in the country. But now AI, we have applied it to biology and now to health. So 2000 nalli nobody was talking about AI like they are talking today. But actually, both Ramesh and I are professors of computer science, and then we came into biology. So actually, it is also the first AI company. Nam Bengaluru, Karnataka Raja nodidre, we are leaders in IT, but we are also leaders in biotechnology. And this company is actually the perfect, melting of the two skills. And so, it is both an IT company and a biology company. Moving into health.
Before we conclude, we just showing you a few glimpses of the new technology developments at STRAND. So all of the genomic testing that we do, it comes with a prescription like this. You would have seen how prescriptions are written. And genomic testing itself is very dependent on how you read this prescription, because you have to figure out which gene may be causing all the problems that are listed here. And this is very hard. People spend a lot of time on figuring this out. So now with AI, we have largely automated this process, where it can automatically read all of this, convert it into text, and map it to the right set of genes from all of the literature to say that here are the genes that you should look at. So this is something that we are releasing into our process shortly, and this will enable us to make our genetic testing faster and more affordable. So AI is going to play a big role in being able to deploy these solutions. Another thing is the use of AI in drug discovery. We've just releasing this software platform where it can a lot of the drug discovery process relies on analysis of genomic data, and there is so much data out there. So this tool can reduce the amount of cost needed to locate the right genomic data that can help answer specific questions. So this enables us to answer questions raised by our pharma partners faster and better, 3 times faster. We are also releasing the next version of our early detection test. A year ago, we had released the first version where we covered 10 cancer types. We have now expanded that to 14 cancer types. These are AI-driven models, so it depends on how much data you put in. So we had data from about 1,000 samples a year back. Now we have 1,700 samples worth of data, so all the accuracies, everything has improved accordingly. Most importantly, I want to talk to you about points 3 and 4, the importance of what is the impact of a test like this. So if you take medical guidelines in the US, it says everybody above the age of 45 should undergo a colonoscopy to check for colorectal cancer. Anybody who is a smoker should undergo an annual low dose CT test to check for lung cancer. Now, none of this is done in our country. And even if we wanted to do it, even if people wanted to do it, this sort of capacity does not exist. You cannot have, there are 200 million people above the age of 45, or even more than that, 250 million people above the age of 45 in our country. 200 million colonoscopies, we don't have the infrastructure for. We don't have the infrastructure to screen so many people with low dose CT tests. Test, it's a simple blood draw, you sit at home, you get the blood draw, you send it to our lab, and this will cut down the number of colonoscopies, the number of CT scans that need to be done by 10-fold or 20-fold. So this provides a scalable option for India where physical infrastructure is not there to manage and serve that scale. So we are doing many clinical studies to generate further evidence and bring this to the notice of clinicians and the general public. So this is our hope, is that over the next several years, every individual will be able to do annual screening test, and then only if it is positive, then you go into the invasive tests that require a lot more effort, cost,